this feeling that I'm living the same stressful day over and over again. A 1% decrease in performance today might not make much of a difference. Now we're looking at 30% drop off in productivity, anxiety, irritability, lack of ability to sleep. So let's say you are someone experiencing burnout. What can you do to get back to a more normalized state? Burnout is a term that you're probably familiar with, but it may look a little different than what you imagine. Burnout won't always show up as absolute exhaustion as most people think, especially if you're the type to grind until the work is done and to hell with breaks. There are probably a lot less obvious cues that you're missing. So what does burnout actually look like? Burnout might show up as brain fog, lack of focus and productivity, irritability and frustration, an inability to be present, or you notice it's generally more difficult to handle your emotions. This is not an exhaustive list, but you should start to see a trend in the examples I gave. What symptoms you see of burnout will actually depend on which stage of burnout you're in, and I'll discuss this later in the video. One characteristic that I find personally when I'm burnt out is this feeling that I'm living the same stressful day over and over again without making any progress, when even in reality, I might be getting the work done that I'm supposed to do. Generally, however, you will actually start to see a decrease in output over time, especially if you start to notice that it's taking you longer to do tasks than you would expect otherwise without any apparent reason. This is a sure sign that something needs to change. So how does burnout actually impact your performance? The real sinister thing about burnout is how subtle it can be in manifesting itself in your life and as a detriment to your performance. It may take weeks to even notice that something is off. A 1% decrease in performance today might not make much of a difference. But now imagine that fatigue and stress is compounding day after day after day for a month. Now we're looking at 30% drop off in productivity. Our bodies and minds are amazingly resilient at keeping things moving forward, even if the wheels are falling off. They are perfectly fine with sacrificing great for good enough. The problem is, if you're, let's say, an entrepreneur or have a really high stress, high performing job, you know that just getting by isn't going to cut it in the long term. So let's take a deeper dive into what burnout is, what to do if you are feeling burnt out, and how to set up your life so that you can prevent burnout from happening again in the future. We live in complex environments where, at one point in time, the optimal physiological state might be rest and relaxation right before we're getting to bed, let's say. Then, a moment later, you hear a loud noise and bang, your body ramps itself up into fight or flight to prepare for immediate action. Our bodies have this amazing ability to move between states to address the needs of the moment. However, if we abuse this ability to ramp our bodies up for action, as in the case with burnout, where we're overstimulated and under-recovered, this system can become dysfunctional and start to work against us. You're likely familiar with the hormone cortisol, known as the stress hormone. Cortisol is one of the major hormones involved in creating this alertness and ready for action in our bodies. In short bursts, like in the example above, where we might need to defend ourselves or get out of danger quickly, this is great. Ideally, after the crisis is averted, our cortisol levels will drop back down to normal and our body can start recovering from that high stress state that we were in. However, our modern life has created an environment where we are experiencing chronic stress throughout the day, leaving a constant low grade drip of cortisol into our body all day long without adequate time to rest and recover. This is what leads to burnout and many other health issues. Burnout typically happens in two stages. Early stage, which is characterized by high cortisol, and late stage, which is characterized by low cortisol. And I'll explain how these work. In the beginning, chronic stress leads to elevated cortisol levels, leaving the body in a prolonged fight or flight state. The symptoms in this stage include anxiety, irritability, lack of ability to sleep, restlessness, and the classic wired but tired feeling, where we know we're tired, but our mind is still racing. Over time, however, our stress response system in our brain, the HPA axis, the hypothalamic pituitary axis, becomes dysregulated, leading to low cortisol output. So essentially, the body becomes burnt out and no longer is capable of responding adequately to stress. In this late stage of burnout is where we get symptoms like fatigue, lack of motivation, brain fog, and even depression-like symptoms. This dysfunctional cortisol pattern is also involved in other physiological problems, including neurotransmitter dysregulation like serotonin and dopamine, as well as systemic inflammation and immune dysfunction. So let's say you are someone experiencing burnout. What can you do to get back to a more normalized state? So step one, pause and regroup. We're going to stop digging a deeper hole. This is a time where we're going to learn to say no and start to set boundaries without feeling guilty. If you're feeling burnt out, you have to start advocating for yourself. It's not necessarily about working less, but it's about prioritizing some time so that you can start to recover. So what does this recovery look like? This brings us to step two. We're going to break the cycle. This is where we use tools to start to reset the nervous system back to baseline. The goal here is to create a handful of moments throughout the day where we can gain some clarity and bring our attention back into our bodies and the present moment. From my experience, the most reliable way to affect the mind is through the body. So what we're trying to do here is shift our bodies from the sympathetic state, which is our fight or flight setting on the nervous system, to the parasympathetic state, or rest and digest and recover. The easiest thing to throw into your day is breathing. There are many different types of breathing we can do. We can do box breathing, the 4-7-8 method, physiological sighs, and there's many others. And you may want to experiment here to see which ones work best for you. Personally, the way that I've found I can use breathing to relax the best is a simple inhale through the nose, not aggressively, followed by a long exhale through pursed lips. The key here is to breathe in for as long as feels comfortable and breathe out for as long as feels comfortable. 5 to 10 of these breaths and you should start to notice your body start to relax. Another great tool is go for a massage therapy appointment or self-trigger point release, which is essentially massage therapy that you apply to yourself. I will have some more videos on that in the future. Rhythmic, low-intensity movement like walking is fantastic for relaxing the mind, especially outside where our visual system can pan around the horizon. This has a relaxing effect on our nervous system. This one might sound a little silly, but if you're in a place where weather permits, get outside in the sunlight with bare feet on the ground. This so-called grounding has been shown in multiple studies to help with relaxation, even improve tissue and wound healing. And a major roadblock to this process is going to be screen time. So try to avoid the Netflix binging and doom scrolling. It's not going to do you any good when you're in this stressful state, and it's going to make things worse. Step 3 is we want to get good nutrition. A simple thing you can do is increase your electrolytes, particularly magnesium, sodium, potassium. When we're in this stressful state, our bodies actually excrete more minerals, and this can contribute to muscle tension, brain fog, and poor nervous system regulation, making it harder to recover from stress. You can start by adding a few pinches of salt to a glass of water in the morning and right before you go to bed. Or if you prefer, you can look into the various electrolyte beverages that are on the market. Also, we want to prioritize protein and healthy fats. For fats, we specifically want to prioritize things high in omega-3, which is super important for brain health, and also saturated fat to support cholesterol health, as cholesterol is involved in neurotransmitter formation like dopamine and serotonin, as well as vitamin D, all of which are important for our mood regulation. And lastly, we want to avoid inflammatory foods. A quick list here is the industrial seed oils, so this is canola, vegetable safflower, sunflower oil. Grains, so think of processed wheat products like pastas, breads, pastries, cereals, and most other dry packaged snacks you can think of. I also recommend limiting alcohol and cannabis use during this time, as these products can have negative effects on our ability to recover, especially when it comes to sleep quality. Furthermore, if we're trying to solve a problem, we want to avoid things that obscure our ability to actually see where the problem is coming from. And oftentimes we can tend to use these products to avoid looking at the problem that we are trying to solve. In step 4, we want to prioritize sleep. Obviously, sleep is the primary way that our bodies recover. So there's a few things that we can do to optimize our sleep quality and our sleep patterns. A simple one to look to is screen time. Avoiding bright lights and screen time within 2 hours of bedtime is crucial to allow our bodies to wind down. You're probably familiar with the hormone melatonin. The way that melatonin is regulated in the body is that when our eyes receive blue light. So think of the whiteness of a light as opposed to the warm tone of a lamp, let's say. This signals our body not to release melatonin. When we stop getting that bright light in our eyes, then melatonin can be released, which is super important for getting our bodies ready for sleep. Avoiding screens at night has a great return on investment because it also allows us to avoid stressful stimulus like paying attention to news and politics right before we're trying to go to sleep. Another thing you can think of is meal timing. Having the last meal of your day at least 2 hours before you go to bed is a great way to allow your body to get into sleep properly, as we can take the time to digest while we're awake so our bodies can use all of our resources while we're sleeping for recovery. A hot shower or Epsom salts bath can really help us relax and get ready for sleep. And if you really have trouble shutting your brain off right before bed, you can try something like NSDR or other meditative practices. NSDR, it's also known as Yoga Nidra. I really like. It's essentially a guided body scan. So there's various videos that you can find on YouTube if you search NSDR or Yoga Nidra. They will walk you through getting you to relax your body one part at a time. The nice thing about this is it brings your attention into your body and out of the ruminating thoughts you might have going on in your mind. Okay, so now that we've discussed how to dig ourselves out of burnout, what do we do to make sure that it's less likely to happen in the future? There's a quote from Chris Williamson that I love. There's no such thing as being overworked, only under rested. And this is crucial to understand because many of you watching this video have no intention of decreasing how much work you get done. The question is, how do we work to handle this workload better? So one way we can do this is to start to reorganize how we use our time during the day. We can start to chunk our day into work sprints and recovery windows. So there's been a lot of research done on productivity. And what has been found is that most of us have a window of about 3 to 4 hours where we can actually optimally focus on the work we're doing. Obviously, this number is going to vary from person to person. Now, I'm not saying you should only work for 4 hours a day, but what I'm saying is we should be cognizant of how we're optimizing our time so that we're getting the most productivity when we need it. So this might look like taking one window of time where you only do your most mentally taxing tasks throughout the day, and you save something like, let's say, administrative emails for a time later in the day when, if you're tired, it's not that big of a deal. I can give you an example as I've recently shifted my own schedule and have had great results with it. So I used to wake up between 6 and 6:30, and I essentially had this idea that I'm going to get as much work as I could done before I have to leave to go do my massage treatments. So I might work for a bit and then get hungry and I'd go eat something, and then I'd come back and do a little bit more work and eat more. And over this 4 to 6 hour period, I was very disorganized and didn't get much done. So what I did was I created a 2 hour window from 8:30 to 10:30 where I work as if I'm showing up for a job. And what's interesting is that I've been getting more done in this 2 hour window than I was over a 5 hour period beforehand. So now not only am I getting more done, but I got more done in less time. And so now I have that extra time to do things that help me recover, like take the dog out for a walk, enjoy some time with my wife and kid, meditation, exercise, and anything else I might do to relax before I have to go back into work later again. Another important thing to note here is that I specifically place this time at the time of day that I'm most focused and most alert. If you start to pay attention to this in your own life, you'll start to notice that there's going to be maybe 1 or 2 times a day where you're really, really engaged with what you're doing, and other times of the day where you kind of notice you're sleepy, or maybe a nap wouldn't sound like a bad idea. So if we start to optimize our work times for when we are most alert, we can double down on the productivity that we get out of that scheduling. So switching gears a bit here, I think the most important thing that we can do for ourselves overall is focusing on our physical health. If you take nothing else from this video, please understand the importance of this. There's virtually no aspect of our health that doesn't improve by performing quality physical activity. And in the absence of physical activity, virtually everything gets worse. What's amazing about this is it's low cost and you can get a huge return on investment out of just even 5 to 10 minutes of hard work. So we want to be getting most of our movement throughout the week from low intensity rhythmic movement like walking or hiking, and then ideally 2 to 3 full body exercise sessions per week. These sessions don't need to be very long either. They just need to be functional movements that involve the whole body. I won't go into more detail in this video about exercise and movement, as I will have other videos that specifically focus on this. But just understand that there's nothing else you can do that has as much bang for your buck as focusing on quality physical activity. And this may sound a little corny, but this last thing that will help us to stop burnout from creeping up on us is prioritizing our friends and family. We are social beings, and don't underestimate how important it is for us to spend quality time with people that care about us and people that we care about. Oftentimes, when life is overwhelming, we can start to feel lonely and isolated in our misery. So take the time to plan a date night, plan a family dinner, or arrange a get together with friends you haven't seen in a while. This can go a long way with helping you live with vitality and energy and the general feeling that you're excited about taking on the challenges of life. So, to wrap everything up here, burnout is not just about being tired. It's about having a system that's overloaded because it's under recovered. The elite performers in the world don't avoid stress. They just manage it and recover better than others using many of the tools that I mentioned in this video. So understand that recovery is not optional when it comes to long-term success. It will take time to figure out what the best routine is for you. But if you prioritize physical activity, create a habit of healthy nutrition and daily recovery practices, and spend quality time with people who give you energy, you will get to a place where life feels exciting once again. Thank you so much if you made it this far in the video. And if you found value in this video or other videos I've made, please consider subscribing to the channel.